3 years ago, when I was 19, I had just gotten hired at my local mall. Even though I've always hated the mall and have lots of weird experiences there, I was desperate after quitting my previous job, and I figured with coworkers around, I'd be safe. It was about 6 p.m. on a winter night, and I was asked to come into the store to fill out paperwork before I started working. I was seated on a bench near the back of the store, next to a boy who had also just been hired. We made some small talk about the job and how the piles of paperwork were easily the largest and most ridiculous we'd ever seen. I thought he seemed cool. We quickly got to work and started filling out the forms mostly in silence. At first I was so absorbed in the papers that I didn't realize I was being watched. I looked up to see a tall man about 6'5", maybe 45 years old, standing about 5 feet away, eyes locked on me. I stared right back at the man, and after a few seconds asked if I could help him. He asked some very vague question about the store. I gestured to the huge pile of papers in my lap and told him that I hadn't started working yet and couldn't help him. He just continued staring. I'm a small girl at 5'1". I've been creeped on plenty of times and learned a long time ago not to be too polite about it, though I had just gotten hired, and I didn't want to be rude about it either. "What?" I asked impatiently. Do you have a boyfriend?" He stuttered. "Yes," I lied, looking back down and continuing writing. "How old are you?" He persisted. I just said that I was sorry and that I was busy, not looking up. He stood there, and he asked when I had started working and if I lived close by. He asked if my boyfriend was good to me. I ignored him. Finally, he walked away. The boy sitting next to me ignored this whole encounter. I decided that he wasn't as cool as I'd first thought. A few minutes later, I noticed the man wandering aimlessly around the store, occasionally looking back at me. I wondered if my new coworkers would think I was dramatic if I asked to be walked to my car. The next time I looked around, he was gone. Relieved, I finished what felt like the millionth written form and pieced the fuck out of the store. I scanned around as I made my way towards the mall exit, and I saw no sign of the man anywhere. I couldn't see anything outside the glass doors, but I could see that it was dark. I walked outside, and as soon as the door closes on me, I am literally lifted off of my feet. The man from the store is picking me up, kind of rocking back and forth in what was the most terrifying hug sort of thing I had ever experienced in my life. He put me down to tell me that I'm everything he was looking for in a girl and how nicely he'll treat me. He said that he could tell as soon as he saw me that I was the one. Of course, I didn't see one other person in the parking lot. At first, I was stunned. Then he reached for my hand when fight or flight finally kicked in. Before I knew it, I was, stupidly, booking it to my car, keys already in hand, not looking back. I looked up for a split second as I was unlocking my door and sliding into my car, and I saw nothing. I didn't see him anywhere. Like, what the fuck? My first thought was, he's in my car. And I looked in the back seat, even though I saw when I entered my car that it was empty. I didn't know if he was hiding behind a car, hiding behind my car, getting in his car, or if he followed me at all. But I was 100% mentally prepared to run him over should he come running from somewhere. I didn't know if he took a lucky guess as to which one of the mall's exits I'd come out of, or if he saw which way I'd entered. I got out of that parking lot real quick. I was frantically looking through my rear view mirror as I sped home, half expecting to see the dude pop up from my back seat. I didn't see anyone following me, and started to calm down, when suddenly I see this huge black truck ripping down the road behind me at top speed. It was a pretty good distance behind me, but I noped out of the situation without a second thought, and pulled into a hotel parking lot that I was luckily next to at the time, turning up my headlights and parking amidst the other cars in the lot. I lowered myself and watched the truck continue down the road. I had no idea whether the car was him or just a person driving fast, but I didn't move for probably 5 minutes, on high alert, ready to poop my pants at the drop of a pin. Never seeing the truck return, I decided to continue the drive home, taking a detour from the road I was on. No one followed me the rest of the way. I quit my job before I even started, and I cried on the inside for a few hours, and that was that. Some quick background and a disclaimer. This happened sometime between 2006 and 2008, but I remember it pretty vividly. My two friends and I were planning on a road trip, and there were constant distractions at one of our houses, so we headed out to a road nearby. This road isn't used very much. There's an old abandoned factory, a few businesses that were more for storage, so no one was around much, and a baseball field. A few cars would travel down the road as it's used as a bit of a shortcut in my town, but it had very little traffic. Naturally, the baseball field seemed like the perfect place to go in late spring. Green grass, bright sun, and no distractions. My friends and I sat at the outfield, at the very back of the fence, which was incredibly tall to prevent stray balls from being launched into the nearby river in the near parking lot. We'd only been sitting for about 10 minutes when a car pulled into the parking lot. It was a pretty nondescript vehicle, old, gray, and boxy. The only thing that stood out was the huge antenna poking up from the roof, but we ignored the older man that got out of the car, walked to the trunk, and took out a metal detector. He began to go through the motions, sweeping the detector back and forth over the gravel parking lot, and two things immediately seemed off to me, thanks to my own dad being a big metal detector buff. There was no reason for him to be metal detecting in a parking lot, unless he was specifically looking for something he'd lost there during a game or something. Our town is pretty historical, and offers a lot of good places to detect for relics of actual value. He was doing it all wrong, too. He had no headphones, which many detectors use, and his movements were very quick, not giving enough time for him to even find something if anything were there. And it was the speed that really alarmed me and caused me to alert my friends. He was quickly making his way over to us, and even though he had made a fence between us, we all felt threatened, so we packed up our road trip planning things and headed out to the entrance of the field. But as we did this, the man threw his detector back into his trunk, got into his car, started it, and pulled it around to the front of the field as we reached the dugouts. We waited by the dugouts, watching for his car to pull around and move on to the road, but it didn't come. The longer we waited and listened, we realized he was still there. He was idling on the other side of the dugout. My friends and I were torn, whispering frantically to each other. Did we go into the dugout for protection? But then we'd effectively be trapped in a concrete cage. Did we make a run for the railroad tracks on the other side of the road and try to sprint to my friend's house several blocks away? Did we try to scale the huge fence on the other side of the field, away from the parking lot? I mean, what the hell did we do? Finally, we calmed down enough to call my friend's stepmom and begged her to pick us up. She could tell by my friend's voice that something was wrong and showed up pretty quickly, but the minutes we waited it felt like hours. The car just idled there, waiting for us, until my friend's stepmom's SUV pulled down the road, and then he was off, tearing out of the parking lot and down the road in a cloud of dust. Scared, we climbed into the SUV and told her what happened. Then we asked to borrow the SUV so we could take a drive to a safer park farther away. An hour later, it found us pulling into a popular park in our city, which included the community center pool. When we drove by the pool, we saw the now familiar gray car with a huge antenna reaching for the sky, our metal detector. We slowed down, parked, and there he was, going through a charade of metal detecting outside of the pool. He kept poking around in the lawn, glancing up to the pool, kneeling and digging while not even looking at what he was digging. Just staring at the pool where the kids were swimming and laughing, totally unaware. I don't know how long we waited and watched, but when he got back to his car and pulled away, there was a mutual, unspoken decision. We'd follow him. So we did. We followed him several blocks before he finally caught on to us. Of course, we weren't very sneaky. We were 3 teenage girls in a huge SUV. He pulled over and glared at us as we drove by. Our cover was blown, so we headed home to speculate about him. Was he a pedophile? Would he have kidnapped us? What the hell was with that huge antenna on his car? Whatever the answers, we already knew we never wanted to meet him again. And no, we never did finish planning our road trip. Story 1 of a few strange encounters I've had. This situation occurred to me when I was the naive age of 12 years old. It was around the summertime, so I was just about finishing my first year in junior high school. My school was pretty far from my home, so every day I had to take a bus home from school. My aunt and mother specifically chose the same school for my cousin and I, so that we can go from school and back together. Since we did not have the same schedule, the rule was to wait for each other depending on who left school first, to take the bus together. We were not allowed to walk home from school. It was quite a distance away, so they didn't want us to take the risk by walking home. Unfortunately, my cousin didn't always follow that rule. He didn't see the need to take the bus with me every day, and would sometimes go walking home with his friends who happened to live close by to him. Most of my friends lived near our school, so I had no one to walk home with. There were times he did take the bus though, depending on his mood, I guess. So one day, I head over to the bus stop, waving goodbye to my friends, and waited. This bus was one of the slowest buses ever, and would often get so packed with people that it would skip my stop, so I usually expected to wait a while. On this day though, the bus was surprisingly empty except for maybe one or two other people. It was early summer, so most students would go to the pool or go to the park right after school to hang out. Basically everyone was walking home except me. Living in a city, New York City to be exact, exposes you to weird experiences on almost an everyday basis. I was young, naive, and seriously thought I was not likely to run into anything strange. This is probably why I never really paid that much attention to my surroundings. However, after waiting at the bus stop for a few minutes, I felt strange all of a sudden. I felt like I was being watched. New York City on a bright summer day meant there were plenty of people around, but somewhere, someone was watching me. I couldn't pinpoint who or where it was, but it was such an unmistakable feeling. I tolerated this for a few minutes and just ignored it. If it was bad, it would have happened already. Yes, that was my stupid 12-year-old logic. From time to time, I would check to see if the bus was coming, but it was nowhere in sight. I guess that feeling of being watched was getting to me because I started feeling really anxious. Right when I thought I was just being stupid, a man approached me. It was like he just appeared beside me. I didn't even feel his presence at all, and jumped in surprise when he asked, "Hey, can you help me?" I never mentioned this, but as a 12-year-old female, I was already around 5'7", and the tallest of my class. This guy was around 5'5" or so. He looked to be about in his mid-40s, and was Hispanic like myself. He looked pretty harmless. He didn't look like he was high or drunk. He asked me this question in Spanish, to which I responded, "Sure, how can I help you?" in Spanish as well. Since he didn't look suspicious at all, I relaxed and was eager to help a person in need. He then asked, "How do I get to Avenue B?" I looked at him with, I assume, a very confused expression. We stood near a corner where a street sign was clearly visible. It said, Avenue B. This was obviously a red flag, even for a naive 12-year-old girl. I held back a chuckle, thinking maybe he couldn't see well, and said, "This is Avenue B." Then he looked at me for a moment and gave me one of the most creepy smiles I've ever seen in my life. It wasn't warm at all. It felt wrong, like he wanted to eat me alive. I instantly felt nervous. Then he said, "You're such a sweet girl for helping me. What's your name?" My heart was racing at this point. "I can't tell you," I responded quickly and checked to see if the bus was coming. I thought if I brushed him off and ignored him, he would take the hint and leave. It was silent for what felt like a few hours. I looked around me, at the floor, everywhere except the area beside me. Eventually, I exhaled and checked to see if he left. Nope. He was standing intently beside me with that creepy smile plastered onto his face. "If you come with me, I'll give you a nice gift," he said, still smiling. I never hated my cousin more than I did at this moment. Of all the days he decided to walk home instead of take the bus, it just had to be the day some creep approached me. I know I couldn't stay at the bus stop. He was persistently asking me questions. He would move his eyes up and down my body slowly. When you're afraid and basically suck at being social like I was, you would never think to ask for help. I don't know why I felt like I needed to handle this myself, but I decided to leave this stop and walk to the stop before mine, which was about 4 to 5 blocks away. I was hoping to get away. I didn't even bother responding to any of his questions and just casually walked away. I was speed walking and was so grateful for having long legs. I reached the end of the first block and looked back to be sure. He was right behind me. "Don't be shy. I just want to give you something," he said, practically pleading. Nope, I didn't want it. I kept walking, looking through the crowd of students, hoping to spot someone I knew. No luck. So I kept walking until I finally reached the next block. The blocks were short but fell so far apart at that moment. I had 3 left to go. I looked back again and he was still there, laughing like we were playing some sort of game. This guy was keeping up pace even though my strides were longer than his. He was so close. I could hear him breathing heavily. He was practically jogging behind me since he had trouble keeping up. This guy was seriously demented. There were no cell phones yet back when this happened, so it's not like I could call anyone. I didn't want to stop at a payphone to make a call so that he could catch up with me easily. I didn't want to bother asking a stranger for help either. If anything, I was paranoid. What if they did the same thing as this creep? I thought. I was an idiot. I was panicking, so at that moment I lacked common sense. "Stop walking so fast," he said. "Really?" I was just about to start running when magically one of my classmates appeared. She was walking with a bunch of her friends. We had a few classes together and hardly spoke to each other at school, but I didn't care. I needed an escape. I walked straight up to her and said, "Hey, Julie, can I walk with you?" I was too excited when I asked her this, and she gave me a look that said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" but then continued to look at me. I guess the look of panic on my face was obvious, so she said, "Sure, let's go." I am forever grateful to her for reading my face so well. I walked with her quietly for a few blocks past my bus stop, until she had to return home. I thanked her and looked behind me when she left. He didn't follow us. I jogged to the next stop just to be sure, and the bus arrived about a minute later. I never saw him again after that day, and never told my mother anything about it until years later. I should have said something in case he preyed on someone else. I will always regret that. Wherever you are, creepy bus stop man, let's not meet again. Hey there guys, it's Blue Spooky once again. I just wanted to thank you all for taking a chance to watch the video. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to subscribe, check out my Twitter and Facebook, and leave a comment if you have any constructive feedback. Also, if you have any stories that you'd like me to read, please feel free to send them to my email at bluespookyreadings@gmail.com. Thank you guys for your time, and I hope you have a great day.